Everyone who's gone into something and has climbed a ladder and created something that's impactful and meaningful has probably faced something very similar to what you're facing. Hi, my name is Izi Chinchay. I'm a soccer coach, podcast host, and entrepreneur. And today I'm going to be talking about my podcast and just like where I'm at with it. I've been coming up on a year of producing and whatever else it's called, showcasing my podcast. And I'm going to be very transparent in the fact that it has not been easy. It has not been easy to show up consistently, to post a podcast a minimum of once a week on the same day at the same time, to create shorts from that podcast, to stay consistent, and to no matter what, always try and add value. That's not easy. And that's why only, I think, like 5% of podcasts or 10% of podcasts even hit 20 episodes. I think I'm close to 70 and have been able to stay consistent and at least resonate with some of my listeners. And the reason I'm talking about this today is because I just want to be really honest and vulnerable in the fact that it's not easy to start things like this. It's not easy, but that should never be a reason to not do it. And the truth is, if you want to start something that you think is going to have great impact and is going to be game changing and life changing and make you a lot of money and, be the thing that you wanted in your life, but you just become it and create it, it's not going to be easy to do that. And more than anything, it comes down to this. It comes down to being brave enough to being bad at something. Because anything that's new, anything that we're first trying to do and starting out, we're going to probably be bad at it. And that's why we avoid new. And that's why change and new is hard and uncomfortable. And it's why most of us don't like new things, because it's hard and we don't want to be bad at something. And so we have our pride constantly trying to protect us and say, no, don't try that new thing, because then we're going to feel like crap about ourselves. But that new thing is exactly what you need in order to get that push to reach that next level of your life. And for me, that podcasting was definitely one of those things. Now, in this year of podcasting, have I had great success? In my opinion, no. It's actually not gone the way that I thought it would, towards 6 months in. I thought we'd have more traction than we did. But what I have gained is experience, confidence, and more trust within myself, because I've committed to something and I've showed up to do that thing over and over and over again. And you never, ever, as long as it's productive, you're never ever going to lose if you choose to commit to something and do that thing over and over again. And like I said, it's not always easy, it's not fun, but there's so much value in doing something that kind of sucks and doing it consistently. And I'm not giving up. I'm not quitting. I'm not stopping. And I really appreciate all my listeners, like the people who actually do reach out and say this podcast resonated, this podcast landed, because you're exactly who I'm doing it for. I truly am coming from a place of servitude and trying to help and trying to add value. But that's not an easy thing to do. And starting a podcast is definitely not an easy thing to do. And it's definitely not easy to stay consistent. And it hasn't been perfect. None of this process has been perfect, has been just easy by any means, but that doesn't mean I don't need to take action. And I was talking to a friend this morning, this theme kept on coming up, that's it's so much better to take consistent, imperfect action than to every now and then take really amazing, perfect action, right? So for me, it's way better for me to post good enough for right now, for the skills that I have, for the knowledge that I have, for the funding that I have for this podcast weekly. That's good. That's in the long run, that's going to compound. However, if I was just be like, no, I'm going to invest in the best editor, the best sound, the best camera, the best lighting, all the things, only film on days when I'm really feeling like it, I really want to do it, when I have the best topics, the best show notes, and then I'll get like maybe one podcast a month or a podcast every other month. The volume is just not there, so it wouldn't grow. Maybe I'd get a little bit better rates on the listening, but I also want to have learned all the skills that I have in this process. And something that's also been really helpful, that sounds kind of funny, but it's just been getting comfortable seeing my face on camera, not really caring about all my flaws that I see, and also getting over my voice. I feel like that's something that I see so many people struggle with. They're like, I don't want to hear my voice on camera. It's deep, it's high pitched, it's whatever. And I'm just like, I don't care. I'm here. I'm trying to be real. And I'm trying to be authentic. And that's something that I'm committed to, is not showing up and faking it and being like, oh, it's been so easy. I've just like climbed with like no struggle and I've just arrived and I'm better than you. And no, that's absolutely not the truth. I have days where it's really, really hard to show up. It's really, really hard to do this, but I just do it despite feeling that way, despite it being hard to sit down and be like, all right, we're going to film another batch of podcasts. We're going to produce another round of podcasts. We're going to stay consistent, even though sometimes it feels like, man, is anyone even listening? Is this even worth doing it? And it's sometimes I'm like, is it? And I don't know what actually quantifies that for me yet. Actually, I do. I'd say the biggest thing that makes it worth it is the fact that there are people who have reached out to me and said like, hey, this is exactly what I needed to hear. So if you're one of those people, thank you so much, because you have no idea the impact that has on me. Because like even today, the reason I'm coming from this space, this is not even a podcast that I had scripted or outlined or anything. I was just like, I'm literally just going to talk about this in this space that I'm in, because I've had a hard month. I've had difficulties. This hasn't been an easy process. I'm coming up on a year. We don't have the numbers that we thought we were going to get, the traction, the listeners, the views, and like that's okay, because greatness takes time. Great impact takes time. And we live in a world where instant gratification is like what we have all the time. And so I just want to be really, really transparent though, and be like, just because you start something or you're in the beginning phases of something and it's not easy, you're not getting traction, it's not going the way that you thought, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing it or that it's the wrong thing. It probably means one of two things. One, you just haven't been doing it long enough. Period. Like you just haven't been doing it long enough. And two, you probably need to develop more skills to help support that, right? And for me, it's been a huge skill development, just learning how to look at the camera long enough. Like that's a really hard thing to do by yourself, to just sit there, look at the camera, continue to look at the camera. I'm like, what have I been looking at? And I have to really pretend like I'm talking to a person. I'm really talking to you. And that's been a skill that's been, really, really helpful to learn, but not easy. And, the other piece of this is coming back to the skill of focus. Focusing is not easy. It is not easy to focus. So stop using that as an excuse to not focus on the things that you need to focus, right? I have this conversation with people all the time. They're like, well, it's really hard for me to like sit down and get it done. I'm like, it's hard for everyone to sit down and get the thing done. It's not easy to focus. It's so uncomfortable to focus, but that's not a reason to not focus. So if you have something that you want to lean into, that you want to focus on, that you want to pursue, and you're not doing it because you're afraid to be bad or because it's very hard to focus, that's everyone's boat. Everyone who's gone into something and has, climbed the ladder and created something that's impactful and meaningful has probably faced something very similar to what you're facing. And I think that we need more people to be bold and more people to go for it and not be afraid and not play small and not just do what the system wants you to do and be like everyone else and play it safe and not be bad at stuff. You're called for more. We're all called for more. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, even though it's It's not easy. It's not always glamorous. It's not always what I want to do. I literally had to like talk myself into filming today because I just didn't want to do it. That is the truth. I did not want to do it. But I was like, it's not about me. It's not about me. It's about my listener and the person I'm speaking to and the person that's struggling with something similar to what I am struggling with. You got to keep going. You have to keep going. Your message deserves to be heard. Someone wants to hear it. Someone needs to hear it. Someone can benefit from hearing your story, and you can't throw in the towel. You can't throw in the towel. You can rest if you need to. And today I almost thought, I was like, maybe this is going to be the first week in a year that I don't drop a podcast because I feel like that much resistance. But it's not. That's not the week. I gotta just go just one more day, one more podcast, one more. That's it. If I can just stay in it one more time. Now, if I need to rest in a couple weeks and I really feel like this is taking a toll, I can't do this, then I will. But I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. And I gotta keep pushing, and we all have to keep pushing. And it's in that saying, no pain, no gain. Really, truly. If I'm not feeling the pain of the grind of working towards achieving something, I'm probably not going to achieve something that great. That's not to attract like just hardship that's unnecessary, and I don't need to go into that circle. But ultimately, if something's harder, typically the reward is greater. So it's actually good to be like, remind myself like, ooh, yeah, this is really kind of sucking. Why? Why is that? Maybe it's so that when I do cross that milestone and have those many downloads and that many listens, and I have that much impact, and I'm speaking on stage and doing all these things, I can go back and talk to that person that I used to be, that was really struggling, that was thinking about quitting, and I can say, hey, I was you, but I didn't quit, and look where it got me. Right? And that's the thing. Like, you have to remember your vision, remember why you're doing what you're doing. And that's what got me able to like even do this podcast today. I was like, I'm being so honest right now. I did not want to do this today. I wanted to quit so bad. I wanted to quit this podcast. I have wanted to quit this podcast. It is a hard thing to do, but I'm not going to quit this podcast. And just because you want to quit something does not mean that you should. Just because you want to quit and because it's hard, like, that's no reason to quit. That's no actual reason. That is the only failure, in my opinion, is quitting because it was too hard, rather than relying on other resources, resting if you need, and then continuing, right? I'm not saying just like run yourself into the ground. No, but if you quit because it was too hard, I can't do that. I can never do, I can't let myself do that. I can't let myself quit. I won't ever let myself quit because I'll regret it forever, and I'll always wonder what if. I'll always be like, man, what if I did that? And you probably have something that you're like, what if I did just start the podcast? What if I did make the career switch? What if I did start the business? What if I did try and become an influencer? What if what if? And I don't want to have looked back on my life and be like, man, what if you just would have like stuck with that podcast? What could have happened? But no, instead you quit a year in because you didn't get the gratification and the hype that you wanted. That thought for me is enough to be like, oh my gosh, all right, I'm locked in. We're about to buckle up for another year of this. Because you can't even have real data after doing something for 1 year. And I see that, and so many people are like, oh, I tried it for a year, it didn't work. I tried it for 6 months, it didn't work. I'm like, dude, are you joking? Like, I come from an athletic background. So I spent like 15 years of my life focused on getting better at one thing. And that was soccer, that was it. So I know how long it takes to actually get good at that one thing. And that's a long time, and that's a lot of reps. And if I compare myself to some of the biggest podcasters in the space, I mean, just looking at the sheer numbers of how many episodes they've done versus how many episodes I've done, I'm like, do I have no right to be like, oh, this sucks. Like, I can't do this. I'm not getting the numbers. And it also takes me back to like viral content. I was posting every single day for weeks and weeks and weeks with like nothing, and actually months and months and months with nothing. And then like, what if I quit? What if I quit because I was like, well, it didn't happen. And then it was like the next day I like went viral, and I could have quit. And like, I remind myself of that now. I'm like, what, you're just going to quit on your podcast because you're not having the hype and the recognition that you thought you would? You're just going to quit? No, I'm not going to do that, because then it could happen in 1 second. It could finally all click. So if you're tired and you're struggling and you feel like you want to quit, that's okay. That's okay. It's okay to feel like you want to quit and you keep going anyways. And I don't think that's uncommon. I don't think it's uncommon to be like, man, I want to throw in the towel. That's okay to feel that way, but don't. Because your future self is always going to have a question mark. It's always going to be like, ooh, but what if I just stuck with the one thing? What if I stuck with it? What if I pushed a little longer? What if I pushed for 1 more week or 1 more month or 1 more year even? What would have happened? And I keep on reminding myself, like, everyone underestimates what they can do in 5 years and overestimates what they can do in 1. And I'm like, I'm not going to quit based on what my outcomes were in 1 year, when I got to think at least 5 years. I got to think of like 5 years of being consistent, of chasing the same dream, of showing up over and over again, whether you feel like it or don't feel like it. After 5 years, I know, I literally know in my mind, in my heart, in my body, I know that in 5 years, if I just keep going and take imperfect action, and it's not always right, it's not always perfect, it's not the thing, but I do it anyways. I do it despite the feelings, I do it despite the struggle, I do it despite fill in the blank. It's going to be worth it. Because anything that's remarkable, anything that is uncommon and is brilliant and beautiful does not come easy. It takes time, it takes consistency, it takes effort, and I believe in my heart that it will be worth it, because I've seen it over and over again. I've seen so many people ahead of me who have, have similar stories, right? And that's the beauty in the struggle, actually. It is, because you're like, yeah, it was so hard, and that's why it's going to be worth it. And that's what I'm doing, and I'm going to keep doing, and I'm going to keep fighting, and I'm going to keep showing up despite the feelings, despite the struggle, whatever it is, and you should too. Thank you for listening. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, I would greatly appreciate if you could share this episode with 5 people you think could benefit from the show. Also, please feel free to connect with me on Instagram at Izi Chinchay, or my website at izichinchay.com. Thank you so much for being you. Keep being a leader and making this world a better place.